This is War for America, the American Revolution, 1775 to 1782, from Compass Games. This is just a follow-on from the introduction. We're sort of in a position where we're ready to play the game properly now. I've read through the rule book, the new rule book, and I like it. I think the rule book's pretty clear. Remember, it is version 3 and it's a living rules book. I've noticed that it does detail some of the errors in the playbook that were actually inside the living rules itself. Which probably save them having to do a living playbook as well, but it doesn't capture all of them. Even here, there's actually an error on the setup chart play aid that comes with the game, that there should be ×3 garrisons there. Now that's not picked up in the errata for the playbook that is in the rules, but things like the fact the way you set up your card deck is incorrect in the playbook. That has been corrected in this rule book here. But I was following the playbook and I didn't actually discover the error till I got to the appropriate rules section. It's nothing mega. It's just that I noticed there were a couple of 1778 cards in the initial deck. I thought that's a bit weird, because you're only supposed to have your standard cards and then your 1775s, and then you start adding stuff every year. You'll add in new cards from this set of cards over here. Just ignore them. That's a special one that's out there. You can't use that until the Spanish get involved in this war. There are some videos which I've been watching, which are by the game designer Gilbert Collins, and yeah, I've noted a few things on there. They're good. I'd advise you to watch them. It's interesting seeing the game played out. I did find a couple of discrepancies, and he's actually pointed out to me that if there's any issues in those videos, always go back to the rule book as being the proper arbiter to the game. Now, as far as I'm concerned, this is pretty simplistic in terms of rules. If you watch this channel much, you know I do some pretty crazy games. This seems really straightforward to me. It's actually got an index here. It's not a complete index as such. You know, if I was looking at river movement, I couldn't find it here. And movement is all split up. But there's still nothing about rivers anywhere. But it's got land movement, Caribbean movement, naval movement. So most of the time I've found what I'm looking for, and kudos to them to actually put an index in there. You know, I wish every single game that came out had an index. It's absolutely invaluable for learning rules. I often get around that by downloading the PDF. The PDFs for this is on Board Game Geek, and then searching electronically for whatever subject I'm interested in. But yeah, it's good that you can use this without having to go off to a PDF a lot of the time. I've noticed the cards, yeah, they are sort of, this is a card assisted game, so I will be using these cards, even though because I'm playing solo, it's a bit odd that, you know, I know what cards the other side have got. So I'm not going to get surprised if I think, oh, I'll throw a battle card in here. I'll know that they could equally throw a battle card back to negate it, but I can't see a way around that. So yeah, I played through the first turn. The first turn only has like 2 action impulses each, and now we've got a proper summer turn for 1775, and and that's got 4 impulses. I did mention that that's an error. You can't have 5 impulses in an action cycle. Now, yeah, is there anything else I really wanted to say? No, not really. I know issues are going to come up, and I think a lot of the things with this game were just clarifications, really, on what you could do and what you couldn't do, you know. For example, it may be in the corrected robot, but I saw someone asking a question about this, you know, like there's a blockade here, and these white lines go into the blockade. That'll effectively block, it'll stop that line, that connection there. But these ones here, where they don't go through the blockade box, he was asking whether you can move freely between these without even if there was a blockade there, and the interpretation of that is yes, you can. So these clarifications I think a lot of people were struggling with. It's not going to have a huge number of units on the board, and from what I can see from the designer's videos, it's going to be very much a strategic game. This, you sort of almost like a little sort of chess puzzle in a way. The idea there are sort of automatic victory conditions that you can win. I think if the British achieve a certain thing in 1775, they can get an automatic win. There's a few other automatic win conditions. But the ultimate aim is to get your opponent's political will down to 0. Now, the colonials start with a political will of 13 for the 13 colonies, and the British started with 2. I'm not quite sure where the 2 come from. It could be for Florida and Canada. I'd have to look that one up. It's not, and they've all, but because they in the first spring season they actually captured Newport. Newport's got like one Rhode Island here. It's got one sort of location on it. That meant that the political will for the colonials dropped by 1 to 12, and the British went up to 3. So we're now on the summer turn. We've got the action pulse counters for both sides set to 4. The Americans have got some leaders in the leader pool they can bring in when they activate forces, and the British have got some reinforcements which they can bring from Europe. They're scheduled to go to Boston. If you go to Boston, it's like freebies. There is a sort of British transport capacity track, but as I understand that, that's only for using, say if I suddenly decided to move them from Boston to say to New York, or from Boston to go down the St. Lawrence River to Quebec. I'd have to use those transport points to do that. Yeah, the strategic situation is pretty much a problem for the British. They're not prepared for a colonial sort of uprising like this. They've got the Royal Army here in Boston, but Boston's got like a permanent garrison. It has to have 4 units in there, so there's not a lot they can do with their units inside Boston. They did get some reinforcements, but they then moved Howe and the reinforcements over to capture Rhode Island. So other things, they've got a few garrisons floating around and a few loyalist militia. There's some garrisons in Canada here. They actually moved a loyalist group down the river here, I think it's St. Lawrence again, into Saint-Jean, this fortified position. The Americans, their big activity was to send Ethan Allen here to capture Ticonderoga. Ticonderoga only had a little garrison in it. Garrison is a quarter strength point, so they easily captured that. You got Arnold came in as a reinforcement with a optional colonial force, the first colonial force on the board here in Fort Halifax. So it's a bit of a weird one, that it says it's an optional, but even in the introduction videos he said, well, why wouldn't you take it? You know, because historically Arnold did launch an invasion of Canada, tried to get to Quebec by going through really wild territory in terrible conditions, you know, and effectively wrecked his army getting there. So the only other activity was a militia unit was moved from New London to try and reinforce Allen in Ticonderoga to see if he can continue to push further into Canada. And that was all that happened. As I said, there were only 2 pulses each, and they were pre-scripted in the fact that the British went first and then the Americans went second, and then they rolled for the second pulse and the Americans got a double movement, which they couldn't really do much with. And the actually, yeah, no, they probably could have done anyway. I'm not going into that. And it ended up with the British taking the 4th impulse, the final impulse for the month. So yeah, all I can say is it looks okay, and I'm not at this stage. I'm not sure what all the fuss was about with this, but then again, I'm not trying to use the original rule book. Okay.